Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Unwavering Believer. This makes now episode 5, I believe. Crazy how fast this is all gone. I've really enjoyed the process, as I continue to say. So grateful for you guys that are actually watching it and tuning in, whether it be for the first time or not. If it is your first time, my name is MJ Creel. I'm 22 years old. I've been devoting my life to my faith for some time now, and with time, only growing, and I like to think, just gaining more wisdom, with time, all God willing. By no means am I saying, I'm doing all the right steps and you should listen to me because I know exactly what I'm doing. That's not the case in any way. I'm just hoping with my walk in faith, I can hopefully distribute some of what I believe I've learned through trial and successes as well to you guys and maybe help in your journey in some way, shape, in some sort, essentially. So that being said, let's just jump right into the episode. I'm titling it Savage for Christ, or Savages for Christ, one of the two. Because yes, that may seem a little rough, but at the same time, I also want to really grab your guys' attention and really emphasize the point of what I want this whole episode to be about, and that is really just being outgoing, really being resilient, being relentless and ruthless as a believer, not taking this sort of passive, take a back seat kind of mindset that people naturally assume comes with faith, which is the first thing I'm going to tackle, which is meekness versus passiveness, because people may know or have heard, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth, but they don't actually understand what meekness is and how Jesus intended it. And I think, there may be people, whether they're God-fearing or not, or have devoted their life to their faith or not, that actually portray real signs of meekness to a certain degree. And maybe they pursue that and don't understand that's what meekness even is. And that's why I wanted to find that first and really tell you how to differentiate between meekness and passiveness, because it's huge. It really is. So first, let me define meekness. And what Jesus meant when he said, blessed are the meek, he means people that are of calm, sober mind and spirit, people that are not quick to anger, quick to snap. And I feel like that's so easily just lost in the crosshairs, if you will, or just so mixed translated with passiveness, because they think you should just take a back seat, that you should be, as a Catholic Christian believer, that you can't ever engage in any sort of physical confrontation, and that you should be, I can't really think of any other word than taking a back seat, or any term rather, because it's quite the opposite. And by no means am I saying you should be looking to jump into fights and antagonizing people and trying to, get a jump out of them. But what I'm getting at is, as Christians, yes, we should be meek. We should be pursuing the concept of being of calm and sober mind, things that come with faith. I mean, you can't just, by ethical and moral reasons, just tell yourself you're going to be calm moving forward. I mean, that's not really humanly possible, but it is something you can work on, of course. And God willing, he will deliver that. But when it comes to, maybe others that can't defend themselves, people that could use a protector, just like how your family, as a man, you are expected and should be expected to protect your family, regardless of the circumstances. That doesn't mean you'll be successful every time. That just means you're not afraid, to kind of jump on the grenade, if you will, or just take it on the chin, whichever it is. That is what is expected of a man and should be expected of a man. And then you could say, okay, but how can you be doing that? How can you be willing to engage in physical confrontation, but then also be meek, which is calm of sober mind? And it's just so different. And it's just, I think it's sometimes, people with the proper intentions may really confuse it and get confused and want to understand better. But then there's also people who are constantly and actively trying to find ways to twist the faith to confuse others, or to try and make it seem like it wasn't written properly, or doesn't make sense, when in reality it's just, that's silliness, foolishness. Meekness, it is a virtue. It really is. It's something that with faith alone, solely with faith alone, I believe I've been able to develop some sense of that. And by no means am I perfect either, but it is definitely obtainable by faith. And it really is beautiful. People don't really understand it, like when something goes on around you, they'd be like, how's that not really getting a jump at you? Or how are you, like, how does that not bother you, essentially? But it's great. It really is it's a virtue, a certain level of patience and just of calm mind and heart that you don't want to flip every opportunity you get. And not to make this about me either, but I want you guys to understand that I'm not just spitballing things that I think sound cute or ear tickling, but they genuinely are applicable not only to my life, but hopefully to yours, God willing. So back to what I was saying, with passiveness, please don't try spinning it in a different way than it needs to be. Please don't try. I mean, again, if you have the pure intentions in your heart and you're trying to understand, that's one thing, like I said. But please don't try twisting this into what it isn't. Meekness is beautiful, but it should not be taken for granted. It's how that saying goes of how you shouldn't mistake someone's, their level of, like their patience level essentially with weakness. You shouldn't do that, because as a God-fearing man or woman, when you truly believe that you shouldn't fear any man below the heavens except, shouldn't fear anyone or anything except God, there's no confrontation or anything that should ever approach you where you're not, where you believe that God would want you to step in and act on behalf of the person next to you. And you don't do so because you think that God wouldn't want you to, be in that position. Which, again, I don't believe you should be jumping into fights, jumping into arguments and confrontations. But then this goes hand in hand as well with when people, you read scripture and you read where it says, if someone goes to hit you, essentially, turn the other cheek. That's in layman's terms. It's essentially saying if someone comes after you, wanted to lay a hand on you, wanted to attack you, whatever, physical confrontation, even though this is more of a figurative kind of translation, to essentially let them hit you on the other side of your face, just to kind of, in those broad terms possible, if someone were to hit you or come out, whatever, almost to just take it kind of and just not fight back. That's kind of how, if you were to read it very literally, Scripture tells us to act. And, that again it could seem hypocritical in the sense that, okay, you want me to stand up and defend the person next to me or defend myself even, but in the same right, I'm not supposed to even lay a finger on the person. I'm supposed to just take the beating. And then people get confused and it turns into all these things. And that's the problem with when you read scripture. People read it like it's a regular book, and you can't do that. You can't read the Bible like it's just any other book you get at Barnes & Noble, because it won't make any sense. The reason being is because the way scripture was intended was not to just come right, just the words jump off the page at you and immediately it seems extremely applicable to you. You're supposed to do diving into understanding and real, worship and studies to understand what these things mean. And you don't have to be, you don't have to have your PhD in theology to understand what it means, but what you need to do is devote time to really understand it. And yes, we're supposed to, not want to jump at people for no reason, but you also need to defend yourself and people next to you if that's ultimately the only outcome. I don't believe God would expect us to just stand there on the street if someone is looking to mug us or, has us in a corner, at gunpoint or with a knife or something, that you just stand there and say, okay, kill me. That's not the intention. I know people, I could see it. I've read comments and things of people, kind of mocking that and making light of that, saying, why would I want to give my life to a God who essentially is going to leave me out to dry and wants me just to get my butt whooped just so I don't hurt the next guy. Essentially, if you tie it all together, all it comes down to is not believing in an eye for an eye, and then also not confusing meekness with passiveness. You need to be able to defend yourself and those around you. That's why I think training things like I was just telling my buddy, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or boxing, whatever it may be, I'm not saying fighting for sport is the way to go, but having that in your back pocket to be able to defend yourself and your family and your friends and just those around you who can't defend themselves is just imperative. It's of the utmost importance that you devote that discipline in your life so that you can, people can rely on you. Not that you have to be a physical force, a force to be reckoned with, but you need to be able to protect not only yourself, but those around you, more importantly. I think that's what it comes down to. And, meekness, as I've mentioned numerous times, is a virtue. It's something I can make a whole video on in and of itself, but it is definitely something I'll tell you, even with the little glimpse of beauty, or the little glimpse, that I've had of it, it is truly beautiful. It is something that you just don't think is possible, prior to, or you maybe wouldn't have thought it was possible prior to devoting your life to faith. Because I'm telling you, there's circumstances in your life that will arise, things that will come to the light, and you're like, wow, the old me would have freaked out. The old me would have made a scene. The old me would have completely over-exaggerated. The old me would have made this a lot more than what it is. And when you don't, it's like, wow, I'm really at peace. There might be a lot of crap going on around me, but deep down in my heart, I am at peace. And that is something that you don't get from moral human reason or ethical reasoning. And I just have a few things here, and I've almost kind of just touched on them very lightly, each and every single one of them, but being bold and being courageous as a Christian, you're not a Catholic Christian. You're not supposed to, again, take a back seat. You're supposed to be bold. If maybe a conversation arises around you and people are mocking the faith or mocking God, you don't just have to implode on them or go right after them, but never, ever, ever, ever in this walk with Jesus Christ should you ever deny your faith. ever. Yes, I am very well aware there'll be times where maybe it's awkward. For example, you want to say grace before you eat a meal, but you're out to dinner with people you just met and you don't know how to go about it. I get that can be awkward. I'm not saying you have to throw it in their face, but by no means should you ever deny your faith. Ever. Ever. We are human. Even people who have devoted their entire lives to their faith for years and years and years, I would like to think can understand that concept that maybe you're out with people you don't exactly know. You know, you're not a priest or a pastor, so it's not expected that you're just going to bow your head and start praying to give thanks for your meal. But in the same right, you should never deny your faith no matter in front of who. You know, and you'd actually be surprised, not that I'm trying to make God a transactional figure, but what I'm getting at is you'd be surprised. Some people that can really look at that and say, wow, you know, that's powerful. Wow, that's really, really bold, really courageous of you, because you don't always have to say, hey, I'm a God-fearing man. Hey, I devoted my life to my faith. Hey, this, that, and the other, all blatantly explaining as to why, you know, you follow Jesus, when in reality, I truly believe that your actions alone, whether you're talking about grace, you're talking about prayer, talking about the Bible, anything, I believe our actions can kind of come off in a way that someone could assume that naturally either you're morally and ethically really proper, or, which would make more sense, you're a God-fearing man or woman. You know, and those kind of go hand in hand. Being morally and ethically proper comes with being founded in faith, founded in Jesus Christ. And it's really cool. You know, you see the reaction some people will give you. You know, some people may not think much about it. Some people will be respectful about it, but not care. Then there's some people that are genuinely like, wow. Like, wow, that's something I would like to do. You know, I just don't have the courage to do so. And, you know, it's not the craziest thing in the world, but I get it. It's just awkward. It can be awkward. But it's worth it every time. I mean, it really is. You never know, those people that, you know, want to do so and maybe won't say it, or maybe they will. Maybe people that appreciate it, but, you know, it's just tough for them given their circumstances. It's different for everybody, and I understand that. And this ties in again, all with understanding how meekness versus passiveness works. I literally could have made that the title of this video, honestly, but more so than just being meek and of calm and sober mind and being bold and courageous. The reason I'm calling it savage for Christ is because I want people to treat this faith at times when it's difficult. I want you to treat it as if it's, you know, like war in the weight room, you know what I mean? Or like the clashing of the heavy weights, you know, and the way you view that sort of discipline, and the way you want to, you know, things are going tough, you want to go hit the track, maybe do some sprints or work out, or anything physical force. That is so much easier to battle with. I don't care what anybody says. That is so much easier to battle with versus a spiritual battle, you know, the battle in your mind and in your heart. So when I say savage, I mean not only on the external, like, you know, being bold and saying Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and being able to say that as an extrovert, being able to go out and say that to people, you know, without thinking twice about it, that's beautiful as well. I'm not saying that means you have to go in the middle of a public crowd, stand on a table and start screaming, you know, kumbaya, about how, you know, God is the way, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and all these things. But just being bold, being courageous, never denying your faith, and when the opportunity arises, you pounce on it because it's always worth it in the end. There's no level of discomfort that's ever going to outweigh the importance of standing for Jesus Christ. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. And that faith is beautiful, and in due time it will be rewarded. Not that we're making this relationship with God transactional either. But I really wanted to emphasize as well, not only the meekness, but the savage parts, why I titled it that. Just because people are, you know, no matter how difficult they say the grind can be, the physical grind of, you know, the working out is usually what it comes down to, whether it's for sport, whether it just be for the sake of you enjoy lifting heavy weights or you want to train your body to be in the best shape possible. You know, that could be a grind, yeah. But at the end of the day, all that lies in your hands. That power is all, I mean, you can just get up and go do it. I mean, the spiritual battle, these are things that it takes time. It takes patience. It takes discipline, a whole lot of discipline, to be able to, you know, pursue change and accept it, all while experiencing not much change. And that's how a lot of these days, even now for me, can feel, and I'm sure you as well, where you're instilling just such a high level of discipline, but it just feels like sun up to sundown, from when you wake up in the morning to when you hit the sheets at night. It just feels like it's a moving discipline. Like it's just a walking, talking discipline from beginning to end of every single day. And I get that. But that's why the faith is so beautiful, because you got to play the long game. You know, you sign up for this now. You're not seeing I mean, no, by no means am I trying to limit God's power either, but when you sign up for this, this faith, I mean, you put on the armor of God, you get ready for battle. And, gotta get a sign out there saying recording in progress. But anyway, sorry. You put on the armor of God, you get going. And, it's not exactly like this physical grunt work that you get, whether it's from work or, like I said, from working out already countless times. It's so different. And it just takes a different level of discipline, a different level of man, you know. It's very humbling. Definitely very humbling at first. But as long as you're in it for the long run, you know, and you kind of commit to yourself no matter what happens, you're in it. You're in it one way or another. I mean, you see a tremendous amount of growth. And that goes with battling temptations as well, because when you feel like you're living a life solely of discipline, all it takes is one little slip up, one little moment of weakness to really start thinking like, wow, what is the point? Like, why am I even doing this? Like, I feel like no matter what I do, I'm praying, I'm waiting. And I'm just instilling discipline at every turn, every corner, and just nothing's changing. What is the point? But those are the moments, those are the most pivotal moments. It really is. And then with that comes, you know, the temptations that arise. That alone, thinking like that and speaking like that alone is, you know, battling a temptation. But then it's when real temptations come out of that, you know, whether it be things at night, you know, when you go out, things around you, things that you know you shouldn't be looking at, things you shouldn't be wanting to do or doing. And because you feel you're living a life solely of discipline, it becomes that much harder to want to do it. You know, to not want to do it, to not want to give in. And it's tough. It's tough. And that's why I named it Savage for Christ, because it's not just simple discipline. I don't care how disciplined you are to get to the gym, how disciplined you are to do your homework, to study, to go to work, to do whatever it is. This is just different. It's just flat out different, and it's humbling. And I believe every single person that signs up for this faith, no matter how disciplined, how bold, how outgoing you were prior to, you will be humbled. And if you don't humble yourself, it'll be even harder for you. You know, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, but those who humble themselves will be exalted. I think it's one of those beautiful things in all the Bible, because humility is so imperative. It's so important. But you just don't see much of that these days, you know. And what you do see is a lot of people claiming this humility, claiming this level of you know, selflessness, if you will, but behind closed doors, it's the exact opposite. And that's why it's also extremely crucial that, you know, you pay attention to wolves dressed in sheep's clothing, because who people are on the outside, who their public persona is not always who they are behind closed doors. And who they are behind closed doors is what makes them. That's what determines their fate. And by no means am I saying you can always know who somebody is behind closed doors, but it's just, you know, the same way you're not as quick to just listen to anybody give you money on or tips on how to make a ton of money or how to go about ways of life and wisdom and gurus and mentors and all the crap. The way you should be, at least, you know, kind of critiquing them and understanding who really is right from wrong. It's got to be the same way with this faith. You can't just listen to everything you hear. You know, you can't just take that in and assume that's the most viable, proper information, because 99% of the time it's not, especially with social media, and it's just disgusting. And that's why in doing these episodes here and the other accounts I have as well, none of them are actual personal accounts. It's just, you know, the general direction behind everything I'm doing on social media is solely for the sake of the people that I believe spend too much time scrolling, maybe the people that need actual direction and could use an actual helping hand. Maybe, you know, somebody who, like myself, who doesn't serve the world or doesn't want to, you know, maybe it's still something I'm working on. But someone who doesn't serve the world, someone who can't be bought out, someone who doesn't care for the fame or any of those things. And yes, of course, I'm not going to lie to you and say, yeah, you know, a ton of money doesn't sound great, and being known by, you know, an abundance of people doesn't sound great, but I won't lose myself to it. And what I'm trying to get at is that you guys have an advocate in me, hopefully. You know what I'm saying? I'm the smartest guy in the world. I haven't experienced everything, but you know, just like people on social media, I'm not saying I know all things, but I don't know who they are or what their intentions are, but I can't be bought, is what I'm telling you, you know? So hopefully some of the information I'm giving you is real. Hopefully we can eventually build a certain level of trust, you guys, with me, I'm saying, and eventually build relationships in the long run. I'm hoping that this genuinely turns into a community that can rely on each other, people that are not, you know, wolves dressed in sheep's clothing, as I just previously mentioned. It's just so crucial to have that trust in people, to be able to look to people for advice and to be able to trust what they're actually saying. Social media is just so disgusting. And that's why when it comes to posting these things, I'll check every once in a while to see how these posts are doing. Maybe a couple times, 2-3 times a day tops. But outside of that, you just can't find yourself scrolling. Quite frankly, I try not to go on it at all. I have a few buddies that'll send me, like funny clips and whatnot. But even outside of that, you spend any time scrolling, you start to see things you shouldn't be seeing, and that starts arising or starts creating temptations that shouldn't be there. And that's what the Bible tells us, and any spiritual advisor, anybody with any common sense will tell you, just to avoid any situation that could eventually lead you to sin or temptation. And that's what social media is. It's disgusting. So, in the same way as I'm encouraging you to get off social media, I know for obviously, these podcasts and everything are being posted on social media. So at the end of the day, if you watch one of these episodes and maybe it convinces you to make that leap into deleting all social media, I don't care what it does to my account. That's all I want. I want people to find peace, whether it's with it or without it. I believe you could use social media for good. I'm also going to make a whole episode on social media. I don't know how I kind of tailed off into this, but I believe you could use social media for good, for things maybe like this, or if you have a business you want to promote or something like that. But when it comes to just genuinely scrolling, you just come across things that are just so, unholy. It's just so, not every post has to be, a Bible or a Bible verse, but just things you see nowadays, the way the world is going, the direction it's going in, and it's just only getting worse. It's for people like us, you and I, to try and, build this community of believers together, people that we can, be able to have fun and stay within reason, be able to just explore life and find the true meaning of it and find real purpose and all these things for the reason God has put us here, and not fall into the trap of what the world has to offer, because it's just not good. It's just really not. It's not good. And with that, I'll make another video on that as well, between social media. I'll make one and money and what the world has to offer and those things. I'm already looking forward to that. But for the time being, I really want to just kind of maybe wrap this up, because this is a very, passionate topic for me, but in the same right, I feel like it could be tackled fairly quickly. Do not view Catholic Christians as passive individuals. Maybe you know someone who is, and you need to remind them that we weren't put here to just take a back seat to every opportunity that arises, for bullies and people that, don't exactly act lawfully or in the holy sense, if you will, that those are not people that we should just kind of look past and say, no, it's up to the next guy to handle it. No, like, we were put here to be bold, to be courageous, to look after the next guy, to be selfless. The person next to us matters more than we do, type of mentality, like in the military. And yeah, that kind of would sum it up, just not defining, not confusing meekness with passiveness is really all this whole thing to kind of revolve around, and just being bold and courageous and never taking a backseat to anything, and that may sound prideful. That's not my intention. But what I'm getting at is that our Creator, the one we serve, is the only one we should ever fear. So when any opportunity arises where you can be bold, you can be courageous while still being respectful in the same right, I think you should pounce on it. I think you should jump on it, be all over it, and you'll see eventually you'll bear the fruit of your labor, as I like to say, or you'll see that it was worth it. And sometimes you won't get that feeling of gratification or, of that jump of excitement. You won't always feel that, but that's not what discipline is about. So it's about doing what needs to get done. If that makes sense, right? Well, with that being said, we're approaching the 24-minute mark. I really hope I summed this up, and kind of made sense of this. And the only thing I really didn't get to touch on at the bottom, but I kind of did in other words, is just being a man throughout all of this. And that kind of goes hand in hand with being a protector and a provider, and when temptations arise and all things of that nature, that you remember, as being a true God-fearing man, it takes a great level of strength, that comes with faith, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, being a provider, being a protector, always expected. Nowadays that's kind of it's getting a little lost in the translation over time, with how a man and woman are supposed to be in relation with each other. But I think if you stay true to the old traditions, I think, that's what being a man is, as I just previously described. Excuse me, just a little late coffee for today. But anyways, I hope that, kind of sums it up in a general sense. I really do enjoy making these episodes, and getting a few recommendations here and there. I really do appreciate that as well. It's kind of cool to see you guys are taking interest in it, and you you want to hear my take on something else, things that as I'm going to keep reiterating every single time this topic comes up, but God willing, like wisdom that's been God willing, not human reason, anything I believe I've obtained from reading a whole lot of books or from a degree or from, whatever. That's where these messages are coming from. That's what I'm trying to get at. So again, thank you guys for everything. Look forward to continuing to hear from you. Hope you guys are really enjoying it. And with that being said, see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much. God bless.